You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Faith in Sport. This is Dr. John Acquaviva. Thank you for joining us on the show wherever, whenever, and however you are joining us. No matter what how you're joining us, we're just thankful that you're part of this program today. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring on Ed Billick, longtime friend of mine. For years has been my special guest, or right in the studio with me, a radio veteran. We're going to do today's sports topics, including our hit and miss. The second half of the show, we have Lou Judd, the director of Strength Equals Virtue, formerly known as Sports Leader. It's a character-building program rooted in Catholic teaching, and one of the arms of that program is reaching out to sports teams. We're going to do weekend headlines, and then we're going to continue our conversation with God winning and losing. The last time, Ed, we did this, I talked about where is God in the aspect of winning, and today we're going to talk about where is God in the aspect of losing a match or a competition. Ed Billick, brother, I just referred to you, but let me bring you on the show. Folks, here he is, Ed Billick, to be with me for the first half of this program. How you doing today, buddy?
John, good day to you, and welcome to all of our listeners here on Radio Maria. It's always a pleasure. Sit back, talk our faith, and talk a little sport with you here on this day.
No, I know. I love it, brother. There's, as always, the sports world feeds us information. It gives us stories to talk about. As always, you and I start our conversation with the hit or miss. I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get right to it. Do you have a hit or miss for us in the world of sport?
You know, I always think I always have a hit, and then I'm thinking, why don't I have a miss? Well,
why don't you have a miss? You hardly ever have misses.
Yeah, because I'm a pretty positive guy. But I tell you, something is going on, John, and I want to get your take on this. And our listeners will probably see this as well if they're following professional or collegiate sports. More and more players, more and more coaches are professing their faith, their Catholic faith, their Christian faith, either post-game or pre-game speeches with their players or with the media. And guess what? They're not afraid to do that. C.J. Stroud, even if they lost to Baltimore. Then the Harbaugh brothers, Jim and John. And we can talk the specifics. My guy Mason Rudolph, who, we took him the Steelers to the playoffs and they lost. But a lot of these people have no problem, which is just wonderful. I think maybe the tide is turning a little bit, where you're free to say what you want. You're not getting pushback from some of these media types that think you can't be preaching. I think you can. And I think it just reinforces what the Lord wants all of us to do is, be disciples, preach the word of God. Your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think it's more pronounced these days. I think really what it is, I have a theory. I don't really know. I don't think anybody's actually studied this. I don't know if it's something that can be studied, but what you can do is you could go to, say, random 200 interviews and see how often today somebody invokes God's name, whereas whether they would have done it, say, 20 years ago. But I have a theory about that. I think, for instance, in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, people still got a microphone pushed in front of them and asked them what their commentary is of the game, the upcoming game, the game they just played, switching teams, free agency, whatever the case is, whatever the sport is. They would have done as many interviews, probably, I think, relatively speaking, as they would today. But I think 30, 40 years ago, there was not this... There was not a people did not necessarily look down on people that had faith. I think there was this understanding that everybody was of single-mindedness. I once saw an article that said in about 1990, about 90% of all Americans believed in a higher power, and of those 90%, about 90% believed that Jesus was the Savior, right? So this is 1990. It's not all that long ago, but now that tide has shifted, hasn't it, Ed? There's a lot. I think there's people that are either unsure, right? They're agnostic, or they're atheistic, or they belong to simply other religions in which there is no higher power, or the higher power is nature, or whatever that stuff is. And I think this is going into this kind of time in our culture where there's not as many believers, but those believers are stronger. And part of their being stronger is that there is no shame, no remorse, and they have more courage in professing God in an interview. And of course, the interview has nothing to do with God, but they just want to invoke his name, right?
Well, yeah. And then I think that as well as some people are starting to wake up to the amount of evil in this world.
Yeah.
And how we're being manipulated and how the secular society is playing into it. And these athletes say, hey, I got the microphone in front of me. Let me, the Lord gave me a lot of gifts, whether it's coaching or playing sports. So let me use those to the advantage and, go for it. CJ Stroud comes to mind because he doesn't miss an opportunity.
No.
And, you coined a term back in the day when we started working with Radio Maria. What was that? Cathlete?
Cathlete. Yeah, that's right.
And there are hundreds of these Catholic athletes who continue to express their faith. So I think it's good stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what faith CJ Stroud is, but by the way, folks, he's the
rookie
quarterback. Yep, out of OSU, Ohio State, and he led the Texans to a playoff berth, and they won their first game soundly. And I noticed in both playoff wins, when they put a microphone in front of him, regardless of what the question was, he said, first and foremost, I want to give praise to my Lord Jesus Christ.
And the team that they beat, the Baltimore Ravens, I don't really care for, but that has nothing to do with this conversation. What did their head coach do right at the opening of his press conference?
Yeah, he quoted a Bible verse.
Yeah, I think it was Corinthians or something, but regardless, it's out there and it's good stuff.
It is.
Moving forward, good stuff.
And it's one of the reasons that it's so good. And I've talked about this at least once a month on this show. So every few programs I'll talk about this, and that is, it is, hopefully, I pray that it's inspiring to the young athlete, to the young person, the fan, because so often, Ed, we are embarrassed by our faith. We only want to talk about it when we're within those church walls, when we're at Bible study, when we're at youth group. But the fact is that's why you have to give so much credit. That's what's called moral courage. I really believe that's a form of moral courage.
That's a great word. A great word.
He, despite any backlash he's going to get, CJ Stroud, John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, all these athletes, all these coaches who invoke God's name in an interview, not only do they do it, but they do it where it's not promoted, in an atmosphere where it's not promoted, and certainly it's not what the question's about. It's not like the Catholic Register or some other Christian paper or magazine or something is coming up to them asking about their faith. It's just somebody from a news agency like ESPN. And they go, I want to know why you guys won this game. And CJ Stroud, for instance, goes, first and foremost, I want to call on and thank the Lord Jesus Christ. Your commentary, brother.
Oh, no, just good stuff. Looking for more of that to happen. How about you? What do you have for us this week?
Yeah, so I too, I think I have more misses than hits. By the way, I think, and I don't purposely do this, but I think I'm about even. About 50% of my hit or misses are hits, and then the other 50% are misses. But I agree, brother, if you come with a miss, it kind of surprised me. I would say about every 9 out of 10, even 19 out of 20 conversations we have, you start with a hit, which I appreciate, brother. Your glass is half full. That's wonderful. Mine is actually a hit as well, and it has to do gently with the aforementioned Jim Harbaugh. He's the coach, at least present coach of the Michigan Wolverines, and
national champs.
National champs, brother. 2 weeks ago today, they won the national championship, and I was ecstatic. It's been since 1997 that Michigan has won a football national championship.
Well, let me interrupt you a second, just because I don't think we'll spend time with this. You're probably excited about the Detroit Lions going to the NFC Championship.
Yeah, not as much. I'm not as big a fan. That's a different conversation. I've talked about it on this show before, but not as much. And the NFL, interest in the NFL has faded a great deal, actually.
Okay, but it is the Michigan Wolverines.
It is the Michigan Wolverines that won. And the reason it's a hit is not because they won, Ed. That was terrific. And part of it was, literally 50% was, my son Luke, my 12-year-old son Luke, he knows, and I know the players well, and I know their opponents well. I remember scores pretty well. He knows the players of Michigan. He knows their opponents and the scores better than I do. Like, for instance, I'll say something like, remember they beat Indiana, what was it, 42-13? He'll go, Dad, it was 43-17. Like, it's slight correction, but he remembers it. I mean, he was so happy about that. The reason it's a hit, though, is not because they won. It's not because they won their first championship in almost 30 years. It was because of the perspective. In other words, by the morning, Ed, the elation that I felt for that win had faded a great deal. And I think it's primarily because of perspective. Like, this show helps me put sport in perspective. I love to talk about perspective, that sports need to be put in perspective. And I realized overall, literally within the first few hours that I woke up the next morning, in the game, I didn't go to bed. Game didn't end until like 10 or 11 at night, something like that. And I woke up the next morning and I was happy that they won, but I immediately thought about my family. I immediately thought about my relationship with God. I immediately thought about other things than sport. And that is my hit, because I feel like I've gained that perspective. Do I have it fully? Do I still get more upset than I should if somebody drops a pass in an important game, or somebody gets strike 3 in an important inning in a particular game? Of course, but that is part of the gift. And I mean this. I give it 2 big reasons. If it were a pie, the 2 biggest slices of that pie, the reason I have perspective, one is age, right? Getting older gives you perspective, Ed.
That's for sure.
And the other thing is this show. And that's one of the reasons I'm thankful for you. I'm so thankful for Radio Maria for giving me this opportunity to bring the world of faith and sport to you.
Yeah, no, you got the listeners on the other end, but we have the opportunity to have a dialogue. But they're having a dialogue kind of with us. Yeah, John, You're right. Yeah, we give them food for thought, just like Jesus gave food for thought. Now, we're definitely not the Christ child here, but we're trying to help spread his word through the avenue of sports. So
no, brother, I am so thankful when I proposed this years ago to Radio Maria, that they said, and I mean this immediately, they said, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. And to their credit, they want more programs that speak to the non-theologian. Like, sometimes, it's theology based, or the history of the church, or books that have been written on the faith and so forth. But Radio Maria tries to bring the everyday conversation through Catholicism to their listener. And that's what we bring here. And I am so thankful. I'm trying to sound more sincere than ever on this, Ed, but I am so thankful for the opportunity to do this. And it's just wonderful to write about it and to read about stuff like this, but more than anything, to talk about it on this show.
Well, you just said the word write about it. Don't you have a book coming out this week?
I do. Well, brother, thank you so much. This is a big announcement. I have 2 books coming out this month. It's a statement I never thought I would make. So I'm going to mention both of them, but I'm going to emphasize one, because one comes out this week. The other one comes out in the next 10 days. I've written 3 books. One is in press right now. The first one is called Improving Your Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. It's for the youngster who struggles with body image and not seeing God through the clouds of all the body issues that they may be having. So that is the one book, Improving Your Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. The second book I wrote is called Improving Your Kids' Body Image. And it's a book for parents, right? For them to help this, because it's a distraction all the way to paralyzation. People are paralyzed, especially at a young age. And so I wrote a book on that for the parent. But that was first written about 7 or 8 years ago, and I updated it in the last couple months. And the new edition, the second edition, comes out this week. In fact, it may be literally available physically today. It's called Improving Your Kids' Body Image.
Where can you pick them up? Amazon?
You can pick it up on Amazon, and you can pick it up through En-Route Books. It's called En-Route Books and Media. And then the other one I'll talk about probably the next time we have a show, and I emphasize it more because it'll be out by then, or it'll be near out by then. It's Improving Your Sportsmanship Through Catholic Teaching, ... and Common Sense. So it's really what we talk about in the show, and then I just put it in the form of writing. In fact, there's probably not
folks if you missed that, where can they find that? Is that on your website, or you tweet it out, or how can folks take a look at that?
The best thing to do is just go to Amazon, put in my last name, Acquaviva, and put in Body Image, and you'll see the books that I've written.
If
and
I literally put in Acquaviva, I won't get a case of water. It'll be purified water.
It's right. It's purified.
It may even be holy water.
That's quite possible. Folks, you're listening to Radio Maria. This is Faith and Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Joining us in the conversation, as he does just about for the first 20 minutes of our program, is Ed Billick. We have just finished talking about our hit and miss in the world of sport. And there's something else I want to talk about. I know the theme is going to be a little heavy on the Harbaughs, but I think it's worth talking about. And that is Jim Harbaugh, the coach of Michigan, is so unique. As we were talking about in preparation for the show, he's so unique because, first of all, the last 3 years, what he has done is distracted the Michigan fan. Now that they've won the national title, he is still interested in seeking NFL jobs and how interested they are in him. And by the way, I don't think he's going to leave. I think he's negotiating for a higher contract, and that's part of my point. But here's the thing, Ed. They won the championship, it was 2 weeks ago. They won the national championship. And I was so happy. And part of the reason I think that elation went down, along with perspective, was the fact that he started getting interviews or having interviews with NFL teams. And I thought, would you make up your mind? Are you the UM coach, or do you want to be in the NFL? And he does this just about every year that he's been at Michigan. He's done about just every year that he's been a coach outside of the NFL. He's always entertaining different jobs. He always seeing what people want. And then as I'm going through this like frustration of him, last Monday was the Right to Life March held in Washington, D.C. And it was cold, it was freezing, and it was snowing, and there was hundreds of thousands of people there, right? And Jim Harbaugh showed up. He showed up, and he likes to wear, like his brother John, his Catholic faith on his sleeve. And he said there's nothing more important than the sanctity of life. And it was just uplifting. And I came to the realization, Ed, he's like you, me, and everybody else. He has flaws. I think greed or attention is driving this train that he goes down every year to see how many people are interested in him. And I ultimately think he's vying for more money from the University of Michigan. And on the other hand, he has virtue, right? It takes moral courage, that term again, to speak out against the unborn. Let me tell you what he said, Ed. This is tremendous. This was an interview with ESPN. And he said, I want to tell my kids, the boys and girls in my family, the same thing I tell our players, our staff members. I encourage them, if they have a pregnancy that wasn't planned, to go through with it, Let the unborn child be born. And if at that time you don't feel you can care for it, and you don't have the means or the wherewithal, then Sarah, my wife, and I will take that baby. Who says that? Who says that? In fact, he goes, we have a big house. I have a lot of money. He said that as part of that interview. He goes, bring him to me. I will take that baby. And I'll bet $100 he means it. I bet $100 he means it, and God bless him.
That's a great approach. And you're teaching some life's lessons there to somebody may not even have that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Yeah, I just think you got a little too hung up on him trying to better himself. I'm going back to that. That guy, you're a Michigan fan. I could tell it drives you crazy. Am I concerned if Mike Tomlin's out trying to shop himself? No.
Well, but he doesn't do that. I have a feeling if your guy did that every year, eventually you're going to go.
Well, it's the every year thing, and he keeps coming back. I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it gets a little, and I'm going to give it an analogy. I remember I was talking with a friend of mine who's a big college football fan, and there was this big college. He was a high school player, and he was considered like the best or one of the best high school players in the country. And he decommitted from wherever he was going, like Alabama or Ohio State or something. And then he said, I want to reopen my search for a team. And I remember I asked my friend, I said, I don't get it. He's from Alabama. He's committed to Alabama. Why is he doing that? And it was so funny. I never even thought about it. And Ed, my friend, goes, John, all the social media, all the talk about him in his town, all quieted down when he committed to Alabama. And it hurt him. It hurt his ego. And he wanted to open up his commitment again, or open up his search again, because he wanted to hear on ESPN, on the radio, and the local media, hey, he's searching again. And he wanted to hear his name. And of course, I don't know what's in that kid's heart, but I'll bet $100 that my friend is right.
Well, you know where I've said this before, ego edging God out.
Yeah.
It's about me. It's not about God.
Yeah. Anyway, and the reason I gave that analogy is because I think Harbaugh, I think that's his character flaw. I really do. I think he loves to be loved, and he needs to hear how much he is loved out there. It's possible.
A human side of things.
It's possible, right? Hey, switching gears. And before we do that, I just want to remind folks that you're listening to Radio Maria. This is Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science here at Wingate University in North Carolina. Joining me, he's not too far away. He's joining me via Zoom right now, is Ed Billick. And I just want to thank you folks, wherever, whenever, and however you're listening and getting this show, that we're happy that you're along with
folks. We've asked many times to just drop us a line. John, have you gotten any? I remember that one time we got somebody from
Nigeria.
Yeah, from Nigeria. Yeah, but
I know that.
Have you gotten fantastic. Anybody lately?
No, not in the last couple of weeks, but every once in a while somebody pipes in and they have a comment or a question. And one of the things I'm going to do, Ed, is I'm going to offer at least one of those books for free. So be prepared, folks. Probably in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to offer a book for free. And all you have to do is contact me via email and give me your name and address, and I'll send it to you at no cost.
Good stuff.
This last story before you go, Ed, I think is interesting. And it has to do with the state of California. And there was a bill that went to Governor Newsom's desk that was going to ban football for 12 and under youth. Did you hear about this story?
Well, that state gets involved in all kinds of things they shouldn't be getting involved in. But anyhow, besides that, banning football.
Yes, but
I didn't know if we pay a government to ban sports, but go ahead.
No, I know. Listen to this. However, at least Newsom in this case is doing something wise and prudent. This is a quote from him. He said, "I'm deeply concerned about the health and safety of our young athletes, but an outright ban is not the answer. My administration will work with the legislature and the bill's author to strengthen safety in youth football while ensuring parents have the freedom to decide which sports are most appropriate for their children."
That's appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah. So good for him, and bad for California, and bad for any state that wants to ban something like that. Folks, this is the product. This is the possible result of playing a sport, especially when it's physical, is that injury is possible. But it doesn't really matter what it is, unless it's, I don't know, curling or archery, in which there are very few, especially at the professional level, injuries, if any. But when there are the human body leaping in the air and landing on something, even if it's mat, it's possible somebody's going to get hurt. And whenever there's two people going against each other, whether it's somebody throwing a baseball at a batter, whether it's two football players going at one another, one's a ball carrier, the other one's a tackler, it's in rugby, it's in soccer, and so forth, there's a possibility that you're going to get hurt. And we don't want to ban things just because there's a possibility you could get hurt. Because the next thing is they're not going to let anybody drive. The fact is, as soon as you get behind the wheel, and I don't mean to be facetious with that analogy, but there's something to be said about that, right, Ed? Like, we can't stop everything that we're going to possibly get hurt in, right?
No, but then that's where you have parental supervision and parental guidance. And, some boys and girls are not made for certain sports. So that's where the parents need to come in. And I know you talk that quite a bit. And there needs to be that adult kind of guidance, if you will, Yeah. And so many, I always say this, so many of these Hall of Fame speeches, men or women, who do they always compliment? After all the high school, grade school, college coaches, mom and dad. Because all of them compliment mom and dad. So, parents, you have a big responsibility, and your kids expect that from you.
Yeah. And also, Ed, it's vital to point out that while death can occur, while serious injury can occur, I think it's possible. I think it's not possible. It's I encourage people to pray for their kids. Your grandkids, your neighbors, whoever when you're coaching, I think that's an appropriate thing to do as the coach and as the referee and the parent, is to pray that nobody gets hurt. And if they do, it is limited, but it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. I just don't think all out ban, even in something like football, is wise. And I'll tell you one thing. It's not under 12 football where kids get hurt a lot. It's where they become a lot stronger and faster at the high school level and beyond because they're moving so quickly.
Well, they're growing. Their bodies are developing, as you would say.
That's true. But also, Ed, my son plays under 12 football. Nobody's very fast at that age. The collisions, I wouldn't even call them collisions. They're kind of running into one another. But in high school and college and pros, those are collisions, right? That's a good word, right? Brother, I want to mention just before you go in the last 60 seconds, Nick Saban of Alabama football fame and Bill Belichick, a longtime New England Patriot, considered both the GOATs, right? The greatest of all time at their sport. I don't know how anybody could disagree with that. We have lived in an era with Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, the greatest of all time. Because isn't it Saban won 7 titles and Belichick won 6, something like that?
I think you're absolutely right. You got the 6 and 7s correctly.
And your first thought when we were off air, and I mentioned that the greatest of all time, within 24 hours, retired from their jobs, walked away from the jobs. Nick Saban retired. Looks like Belichick is going to take another job if he's offered. But what was your first comment when I mentioned?
Well, they're both of Croatian descent,
It's
and
right.
I know a lot of our listeners have friends that are Croatian or from the home country, and they're close to each other. Not because they're Croatian, because they're like-minded.
Yeah.
But I'm 50% Croatian, and of course, Belichick his family came from the same town as my grandfather from Dragonic, Croatia. So, kako vi, they say dobre. How you doing? Good.
How you doing, huh?
And I call you brats. You're brats. You're my brother.
My brother. I like that. Well, listen, you're my brother too, buddy. Thank you for all you do for this show. Thank you for all you do for the Catholic faith through your parish and so forth. And brother, we'll talk soon, okay? You have a good day.
John, you and the listeners, God bless. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.
Ciao. Okay, folks, there he is, Ed Billick. Boy, I'm so thankful for him. He just makes the show cruise by, and we have such great conversation. Thank you, Ed Billick, and thank you, folks, here at Radio Maria for listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. We're going to take a break here. Right after the break, we have special guest Lou Judd, the director of Strength Equals Virtue. Hang out for a conversation about that, what that is all about. In particular, they want to reach out to sports teams. We'll do weekend headlines, and we're going to do God winning and losing. So lots to come here on Faith in Sport. Hang right with us. We'll go for a break and be right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science here at Wingate University, but every once in a while I come on the airwaves of Radio Maria and I bring you the world of faith in sport. So whether it has to do with character, morality, ethics, morals, this is the show for you because it's all wrapped into the world of sports. So whether you're a referee, whether you're a parent, whether you are an athlete themselves, whether you're an administrator in the world of sport, this is the show for you because the Catholic faith is just weaved right into that discussion of the world of sport. So here's what we're going to do in the second half. Joining us in 1 minute is Lou Judd, the director of Virtue Equals Strength. It's formerly known as Sports Leader. In fact, he's joined us before on the show as the director of Sports Leader. Now it's called Virtue Equals Strength. He's going to tell us why they had a mission change and why they've added to their mission. And we're going to also talk about we're going to do weekend headlines. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about God winning and losing. And that's part 2. Because remember the last time we talked about God winning and losing, part 1. So let's bring on our guest. He is Lou Judd, the director of Virtue Equals Strength. We're going to talk more about that right now. Lou Judd, welcome to the program.
Thank you, John. Great to have you.
Brother, every once in a while, I know you're so busy because every once in a while I'll reach out to you. I go, Lou, it's time for you to come on the program again. And you do it and you say yes always. All you have to do is work out the times in the day. So thank you very much for taking time. Brother, tell us about Virtue Equals Strength. It was formerly known as Sports Leader. So just take us down that path, how and why it's changed.
Yeah, so we were Sports Leader since 2004. So we were a mission that focused on virtue and ceremony and Catholic identity within the realm of being a sports coach.
Yep.
And so over the course of the years, many teachers who weren't coaches began seeing our content and they said, well, hey, this is great stuff. This is for all of the students, not just athletes.
Yeah.
So we began to just kind of, let's pilot this. Let's bring this into classrooms to see how we can do this. So we started making some materials a little bit more classroom friendly.
Yep.
And it really took off. There were a lot of teachers that loved it. And so our motto has always been virtue equals strength.
Yeah.
So everyone that we're already working with is already familiar with that. So we figured that would just be the easiest name change.
Yeah.
So that if you were a third grade teacher and you have nothing to do with sports, you could still get excited about partnering with us and using the program and integrating it into what they were doing. And so now we still do. We still work with coaches. That's still one of the more exciting parts of my job, especially when you find coaches who truly get it, who love their faith, and they integrate it into their sports team. It's fantastic. That's really some of the best fruit and some of the best stories that I've shared over the years that they're still from coaches.
Absolutely.
Experience.
Lou, one of the things that you probably run into, and this goes back to your comment on the coaches, is for me to do this show and do it by myself, it'd be fine, right? There's a bunch of stuff to talk about in sport and virtue and and character morality and so forth, and people that invoke, these athletes that invoke God's name during an interview when it's not asked for and everything. That's all inspiring. It's all great stuff. We talked about it in the first half of this program. But partly where I get my inspiration from and what helps me gain energy for the show is talking to people like you. And my guess is what keeps you going in your job is talking to faithful coaches and teachers that want to bring to life our Catholic faith. It's so rich. It's so deep. It's not easily understood, at least not to a strong extent. And my guess is that's a big part of what gives you energy is talking to these people that are so faithful.
You're absolutely right, John. It's so true. So, I mean, a story that just happened over the course of this school year, it was back during the football season.
Yep.
One of the ceremonies that we have is called the father-son jersey ceremony. So basically it's just, let's say you were a football team, and you had a son on the team, you're going to go with the rest of the dads and the rest of the boys on the team. And before the first game, you're going to present your son his jersey and you're going to affirm him. You're going to tell him that you love him, that you're proud of him, what he's great at. Yeah. And it's a fantastic experience.
Sure.
One of the young men on this team, he's from St. Joseph Academy in San Marcos, California.
Okay.
Great school there. He loved the experience. He goes to the athletic director, who's also an assistant football coach. He's like, coach, I mean, we don't really do anything that really honors the Blessed Mother, really intentionally on the team. So what do you say we sing the Ave Maria in Latin after our games?
Sure, everybody's doing it, Lou. Why not you guys?
So he's like, well, why don't you talk to the captains, run it by the captains, see what they say. So he did. Captains loved the idea. So the boys, they practiced, and so they did it. They were a very successful team. They had won the game. They're all pumped up. They're celebrating. They take a knee. They said their prayers, and then they start singing in Latin right there on the field.
Love it.
So coach films it, and then he also filmed the two captains explaining why we sing. Yeah. And we posted those videos to YouTube, and they went viral. They blew up. There's comments from all over the world. People's lives changed, excited. And now I've got schools around the country that in different ways, they're trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
They were inspired. And so now this is how these things spread. And so it's fantastic. Just small group of guys that want to honor our Blessed Mother and showing that, hey, we can do this. We can win. Yep. We can be competitive. Yep. We can do our best on the field, and we can also be champions of our faith.
Absolutely. That's the one thing is that so many people feel that if they're going to be Christian, if they're going to be fully Catholic on the field, that it's going to compromise effort or it's going to compromise the desire to win. And I argue just the opposite, that, part of this program is to talk about like virtue within sport, and right. It's playing within the rules and respecting the decisions by the referees and the officials and so forth. But it doesn't compromise it at all. And I love that's what you guys do. Folks, we're talking with Lou Judd. He's the director of Virtue Equals Strength, formerly known as Sports Leader. You're listening to Radio Maria. This is Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Let's continue our conversation with Lou. Lou, who is the audience that you most speak to? I take it as our high school students and high school coaches and teachers. That's a big part of your audience. Do you connect with colleges or grade schools that are Catholic or have Catholic ministry, for instance?
Yes. Grade schools is actually number one at this point. So that
interesting. Okay.
8 schools have really grown. There's a lot more principals and religion teachers, directors of religious education.
Yep.
That have really taken to this, really. Awesome. Because I think also what's happening is that there's some standardized tests out there that are Catholic.
Yep.
And across the country, the areas where kids are performing poorly are in the area of virtue. So many of them know their faith, but when it comes to what's the definition of prudence and how does that interact in your daily life, that's where the test score starts plummeting. And so people are seeing these as, well, we have to be more intentional about specifically teaching what these virtues are, how important they are, and how much that can change our society. Because what we see in society, we see this breakdown. What's happening is we're becoming less virtuous.
Yeah. Of course.
That's what it is. And so when you're less virtuous, you're less happy.
Yep.
You don't work well together as a team. You don't
That's
work
right.
well together as a family. And so you don't work well together as a society
That's
because the vices of selfishness and greed are taking over.
That's right.
And those two vices they'll destroy you no matter what you're doing.
Sure. So give us an idea. This will paint the picture for our listener. Tell us about the most recent or a recent visit that you had. You mentioned it was in California, correct? And I think you touched on it just a couple minutes ago, but can you expand on it? Like in particular, like what does a session look like? What are some of the specific like discussions? What are they about? What are some things that you already touched on, but you can elaborate on now so people get a real good idea of what virtue equals strength does for our youth and the people who teach and coach them.
So let's say you're a coach. Let's say you're a basketball coach.
Okay.
We have resources that have prayers and stories and definitions. We have a whole sheet that's built out for you that you can bring in your back pocket to basketball practice.
Okay.
So what we tell coaches to do, okay, at the beginning of practice, all right, blow the whistle, bring the guys in or the girls in. All right, take a knee. Get down on one knee. That's going to create a muscle memory. It's time to start. It's time to put God first.
Yeah.
Take a knee, make the sign of the cross, start your practice with prayer.
Got it.
Ask the boys or the girls for prayer intentions, and then talk about the virtue. Whatever virtue. Every week we have a different virtue that we're resilience, discipline, dedication, humility. Whatever it is, start talking about. And then so we provide that for the coach. So you don't have to come up with anything.
Got it. And like it's a binder of sort. In other words, you have resources. If this week's virtue is discipline, you give them like information to help foster discipline. Like here are some examples. Here's the definition of it. Here's how we can do it as a basketball team. Here's how we can do it as basketball players on this team and so forth.
Exactly. And also the opposite. So the opposite of discipline.
Yeah.
So you get into that for a little bit. Okay, then start your basketball practice. You do your weave the word discipline in practice as much as you can so the kids can see, okay, right now, because y'all aren't listening to me, okay, we're not practicing discipline. Okay, when it comes to a game, if we don't listen and communicate well to one another, that's not going to help. So you bring those different things in. So you bring the virtue into the basketball constantly as much as you can. You go through your practice, you do your drills. Okay, practice is over now. It's time, same thing, come back, take a knee.
Yeah.
Review what we talked about. Okay, what's the virtue? What does it mean?
Yeah.
What's the definition?
Love it.
And then give them a resolution. How are you going to go home and practice this at school tomorrow? How are you going to practice it with your parents?
Yes.
And then how are we going to practice it at our game on Saturday?
Yeah.
And then you, if you've told them a story, tell the kids, tell your parents that story.
Yeah.
So you get into that. That helps with transmitting the faith, because if you can get a kid to start sharing the stories that coach tells in practice, whether they're Catholic or not, that kid will begin to get familiarized, or it becomes easier to share stories or experiences about your faith. Then you finish practice with prayer, and then the next time you're with the kids, you come back and you do it again.
There you go.
And then whenever you see kids practicing it, you lay it on.
Yeah.
You should scream louder when they're doing it right in comparison to when they're doing it wrong.
Sure. Positive feedback. Absolutely.
Loud, positive feedback. And then when they're not doing it, okay, you calm down and you explain it to them. Most coaches, we do it the opposite. We lose our minds. We rip out our hair. We turn green, lose all of our clothes because they did something wrong. It's so funny. It's like in football, a kid did something wrong, unsportsmanlike conduct. So he wasn't sportsman. He didn't have self-control. The kid comes off the field, and what does coach do? The coach is 10 times less in control of himself than the kid on the football field. And it's like, this is utter stupidity. You're not teaching anything.
No, of course.
When you come, you be in control, you practice the virtue, you show him how to practice it.
Yep.
And then you yell at him in positive praise when he does it right.
Very good.
That's the So us adults, we need to learn these virtues because we need to practice them too.
You brought out a thought that, the catechism states that the parents, the mom and dad, are the first teachers of the faith, the first and primary teachers of the faith. But you're bringing a point that there have been studies done that the child, even through college, will trust and have a better, more close-knit relationship with their coach than they will their mom and dad. And the reason I mention that is these coaches you're talking about, they have an incredibly good opportunity to be one of the first teachers of the faith. We're hoping the parents, this is just combining what the parents already do at home. But regardless, separate of that, the coaches have a great opportunity and they can bring it to the world of sport. Because one of the things that you probably found out in your job as director of sports leader and eventually virtue equals strength is that some high schools that are Catholic are not known as the most virtuous athletes when they're on the field. And I've heard that about some local high schools to hear, and I've heard that from priests and other people of the faith. And you are making that attempt to turn that around. So they're not only good, because as you know, there is a lot of not just really good Catholic high schools in sports. Some of them are outstanding. They're in the top 25 volleyball teams in the country, top 25 football teams, basketball, whatever the sport is. But the whole thing is, and Lou, I know you completely agree with this, it doesn't compromise winning or losing to be faithful on the court, to be faithful through sport. Brother, I appreciate so much what you do. Listen, before you go, how does the listeners of Radio Maria, how do they find out more about virtue equals strength? And in particular, how can they get a hold of you if they're interested in this program?
So our website is virtuestrength.org. So virtue strength, all one word.
Got it.
Org. And then if you need me, I mean, you can just info@virtuestrength.org. You can.
Got it. So what I'll do is when I'm about to sign off, I know a lot of times when people are listening to this, they don't have a piece of paper or pencil. So I'm going to let people know. I'm going to repeat that so they can go to you. And of course, all they have to do is search virtue equals strength, and they would probably go right to your website. But this will more directly do that. Brother, listen, thank you so much for what you do for our faith. Thank you for coming on the show today. And please, in the future, I'm going to ask you to come back on. I think people need to hear about this program. I want to keep promoting your mission and what you guys do there. So please respond yes the next time I reach out to you to be on the program, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thanks for all you do. God bless you.
God bless you, brother. There you go, folks. That's Lou Judd. He's the director of Virtue Equals Strength, formerly known as Sports Leader. It's a character building program rooted in Catholic teaching, and just one of their arms is reaching out to sports teams. So check them out. In fact, I mentioned that I would mention the website, and is also how to get a hold of Lou if you want specific information. It's virtuestrength.org. You can check out them at the website. And if you want to ask him directly, Lou Judd question, you can contact him at info@virtuestrength.org. So there you go. I'm so appreciative of Lou Judd and all of the folks that try to help sport better. And in particular, he's helping Catholic sports be better, the teachers of those schools, the coaches at those schools, and of course, the student athletes at those schools as well. All right, folks, we only have a couple minutes remaining. Let's do this. Let's do weekend headlines. We're going to do God winning and losing, and then we'll sign off for the day. How's that sound? And I'm going to remind everybody about the big announcement regarding one of my books. All right, start that great ESPN music or Wide World of Sports music in the background of your head while I talk about this. College football, while most of the world is still celebrating the brilliant championship of the Michigan Wolverines, two stories made headlines recently in the world of college football, both of which defied logic. Alan Bowman of Oklahoma State has been granted his 7th year of eligibility. And remember, folks, right? It's supposed to be like just like in high school, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. And on top of it, Cam McCormick of the Miami Hurricanes has been granted his 9th year. That's a whole different conversation on why they're granted so many years, but part of it has to do with injury, part has to do with COVID and so forth. But boy, I remember when you could play 4 years, then you went out and got a job. In college basketball, the top 25 teams Kansas and Duke got stunned over the weekend, but still, it's one of just the few losses they have. But still, lots of basketball to be played, and because March Madness is still a few weeks away. The top 5 teams are UConn at number 1, followed by Purdue, Kansas, UNC, University of North Carolina, and Houston. By the way, all the top 10 teams now have at least 2 losses, so nobody in the top 25, in fact, is undefeated. Finally, Major League Baseball. Amazingly, we can say the season officially kicks off next month. Because this is January, we can say next month in February. It's because pitchers and catchers report for every team. The date is February 14th. It's meaningful for a lot of reasons. First of all, of course, that is Valentine's Day, but it's also the first day of Lent. I don't have the calendar memorized, the liturgical calendar, but I think this is one of the earliest Lents that has started that I can recall. So there you have it, folks. Sports news that may or may not change your life. All right. So let's move on to something that I talked about on the last show, and that was God, winning, and losing. And I had a 10-point I had 10 points for winning that kind of helps shape what winning and being a winner is all about. And I'm going to recap that, and then I'm going to follow up with what, in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the church, what winning and losing are. And I'll finish it up with losing and losers. All right. First of all, winning. This is a recap from last time. Winning does not make you a winner. Winning does not make you more virtuous. Winning does not gain favor with God. Winning does not make you a better person than your opponent. Winning does not mean you're better prepared than your opponent. Winning should not be prayed for. Winning does not automatically mean the referee or the official did a good job. And winning does not give you permission to badmouth your opponent. Winning allows for the expression of genuine respect and sometimes empathy for the losing team, if it's appropriate. And finally, winning can be a good thing. It could help build confidence. It may build closer-knit teams and may develop optimism for future competition. That's winning. On the other hand, losing does not make you a loser. It does not make you less virtuous. Losing does not mean you lost favor with God. This is the actual game I'm talking about, folks. Losing, continuing, does not make you a lesser person than your opponent. Losing does not mean you prepared poorly for the competition. Losing does not mean you didn't pray hard enough for success. Losing does not automatically mean the referee or the official did a bad job. Losing does not give you permission to badmouth your opponent. And finally, losing allows for the expression of genuine respect and even happiness for the winning team. All right, this leads to the big announcement, folks. Actually, I have 2. I've written, as I mentioned in the first part of this program, I've written 3 books. One is about to come out. The first one, Improving Your Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. You can find that through Amazon, Tan Books. And then I wrote a follow-up to that, Improving Your Kids' Body Image. So the first one is for the young adult, even the teenager. The second one is for the parent that has a young adult or teenager and how they can help shape body image through Catholic teaching. It's a second edition. It's updated, even with some support from some research. I've made it up to date. That book comes out this week. Again, it's called Improving Your Kids' Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. You can get that through En route Books and Media, and you can get that through, of course, Amazon. Just put in body image in my name, and you'll see those 2 books come out. But also, those 2 lists I just talked about, winning and losing, it's in my forthcoming book, which will be out literally in the next 2 weeks, which is called Improving Your Sportsmanship Through Catholic Teaching. So notice that there's a theme there in all the titles of those books. Please check them out. I'm always willing to consider a talk at your parish, at a men's or women's conference, to your school, to your sports team. I'd love to get those. I love to get those emails. It gives me energy just thinking about traveling around the country and giving those presentations. In fact, I'm gonna give a presentation next week at a local high school. Not so local, but not too far from here either, on sport and virtue, sport and faith. By the way, folks, you're listening to Sport and Faith here on Radio Maria. Let's end, as we always do, with a quote from a pope, and then I'll sign off. Remember, this comes from Pius XII. He said, Remember that sports are not the ultimate meaning of life, but only a means to an end, which is the full integral development of the human person. Sports must take a subordinate role so we can give God and our family their proper place. Beautifully said, Pius XII. Before we go, special thank you to Ed Billick and special guest Lou Judd at Virtue Equals Strength. For joining me on the show today, I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Please join us next time here on Radio Maria for more faith in sport. And as always, St. Sebastian, pray for us. Have a good day, folks.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.